What's up, y'all? This is Nina Perez, and this is Straight Talk, no sugar added. I am so glad you're here. As you know, this show is created to discuss real topics to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. And today I found Roy Osing here, and I hope I said his name right. He is the author of Be Different or Be Dead, so you know he had to be on here, right, guys? He's a blogger, a content maker, a mentor to young professionals. He's a former president of a major data and internet company, a CMO, an entrepreneur for over 40 years of successful and unmatched executive leadership experience and aspects of business. And so, as you guys know, we talk about life topics, we talk about business, we talk about all that great stuff. So, Roy, welcome to Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Nina. And just embarrassing, it's Osing, but that's close enough.
Osing, okay.
I get all sorts of permutations, and I'm okay with it. I'm thick-skinned. That's why I am where I am. Got to be able to
Right.
do it. And listen, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you and your audience today on my journey, and hopefully can provide some ideas that might help people. That's what I'm here for.
Good. I'm glad you're here. I mean, I really love the name of your book, and I love like all that experience that you have. So I do want to know a little bit about that. So if we can go back a little bit, I'd like to know, a little bit more about you, Roy. So let's get a little bit about you, and we'll go from there.
Okay, well, to paint the context, I'll start with in the beginning, the telecom world, with like several years ago, was a regulated monopoly. You can
Hmm.
remember that.
Hmm.
I can certainly remember that. And I was in the business as a very young manager at that time. And my conclusion was that we were simply not ready to be able to move to the next chapter, a highly competitive world where we needed to do different things. And
Hmm.
so it sort of motivated me on this be different journey. I tagged it that way in retrospect. I didn't know it at the time, but it led me to a style of leadership that I call breakaway. And I juxtapose it to what people commonly refer to as pivoting these days, which
Hmm.
quite frankly
Hmm.
is a very, very weak word compared to what some of the things you have to do. Pivot suggests that you move on a fulcrum. I'm all about changing the fulcrum and
All
breaking
right.
away from tradition, breaking away from the way things are always done around here, because in my experience that was the only way that we were to be able to survive and thrive. I mean, when you go from
Hmm.
one kind of environment to highly competitive environment, that changes the whole game. You don't get there by incremental thinking. You don't survive by thinking incrementally. And so I kind of was this breakaway dude, is basically what it was. And we'll talk about some of the challenges that goes with that, I'm sure. But I mean,
Yeah.
it was a huge morph in terms of the things that I was advocating, the things that I tried to facilitate, the things that I tried to change in a highly dominated by engineering world, a highly dominated by technology world, when in fact we needed to move to customers and markets and competitors. And um, and so, yeah, it was huge. And literally, I've spent over 3 decades on this journey, because it's not just about business, it's
Right.
about life, being different and standing out and learning how to color outside the lines as opposed to
Hmm.
inside the
Hmm.
lines is a life thing. And so, and a career thing. So I've actually developed to the point where I have this body of knowledge and content that isn't theoretical, Nina. One of the things I want your listeners to understand is I am not a theoretician. I'm not a textbook dude. I'm a
Right.
practitioner in the trenches, getting things done with real people in real world politics in real environments. And it's not that I don't think textbooks are valuable. I do, but they're not
Hmm.
good enough. My
Hmm.
experience
Hmm.
is success doesn't come from what you think and what you know. It comes from what you do and the fire that's going on inside your guts. That's where it comes from. And so my whole leadership style, which I call audacious, and which we can talk about because it's a subject of my new book, is all about lighting
Hmm.
fires in
Hmm.
people. And so I'm doing it now. I continue to do it. I do it with my grandchildren. I have 4 grandchildren. I am the audacious papa. That's
I
it.
love that. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So
That's
that's a bit about
awesome.
me.
So was that always like it was that always like in you to be that way, to be audacious or to be different? Or was that something that you started to discover in yourself when you started to see that there was something missing in business? Where did that come in?
Well, there's no question that the motivation for breaking away was the climate that I found myself and my company in. There's no question about that. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't do it just because it was a cool thing to do. I didn't do it just to be obstinate. I didn't do it just to be
Mm-hmm.
contrarian. I did it because I believe that unless we did something like that to break away from traditional ways of doing things, that our financial performance was going to suffer, the company was going to suffer, we would fail, and we could die. So it was
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in subsequent years, just kind of reflecting back upon that, I do believe my mother, bless her heart, it would have been her birthday today, by the way. Happy birthday,
Oh, happy
mom. Love
birthday,
you.
Mom.
I do believe that there was something in her that she gave me without really knowing, that without me really knowing, and it was strength, it was
Mm-hmm.
perseverance, it was dogmatic determination, because that's who she was. And I didn't realize at the time, man, I'm a young man, and
Right,
I'm
right.
pushing. And my mom and I were having push, the classic thing. And it wasn't until after that I thought, well, in answer to the kind of question that you're asking, yeah, I do believe my mom had a hell of a lot to do with the intrinsic drive for me to do different things.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, because I think that I think it's hard sometimes for people who think very linear, or just think in this way where everything has to like be in order, to think outside the lines. That's why I was asking, if that's something that you cultivated when you saw there was a hole in what you were doing. So were you ever like fearful of taking those steps and coloring outside the line? Because the you said the opposite would have been that maybe it would have been the demise of the company or the business, right? So where you're like, screw it, if I don't do it, something's gonna happen anyway, or were you like, oh man, this better work? Like how
Well,
was what was your mindset in that?
I mean, I guess I never really thought about it in those terms. One of the things I believe is to keep. I love to keep my mind out of stuff like this, because it leads
Mm,
you to logical kind of conclusions, which, quite frankly, don't always make sense. And so,
right.
what I would do
That's pretty
is
good.
I
Logical doesn't make sense. I like
well,
that.
yeah, that's kind of a oxymoron to a degree, but
Right.
in my world, it made absolute sense to not listen to your logic. But so the question is, well, so Roy, who did you listen to? So I
Right.
listened to people who were responsible for executing the plan of my organization. I was president of an internet company in the day when dial-up was the beginning, and so you can go back,
Oh
a
yeah,
couple
I
of
remember.
decades on this. No kidding, right? And so the challenge we had was how to move a voice culture into a data and internet culture, how
Mm,
to move an engineering culture into a marketing and sales culture, how to move order takers into proactive solution providers and people that created memorable experiences. Wow. I mean, just imagine that chasm.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
huge. And so my way of doing it was basically to have what I call a just about right strategy, and I had to build my
love
own
that.
approach to strategic planning, because the consultants and the academics of the day, they had nothing to offer me, for one simple reason: plans tend to be pristine based on reflecting dogma as opposed to being able to execute. And
Mhm, mhm.
I'm an executor. If you can't execute something, Nina, I don't want to talk to you about it. Okay?
Right.
Because the theoretical stuff doesn't really turn me on. What turns me on is results. And that's the other thing I want people to understand. Everything I did, every breakaway notion I had, wasn't done because it was cool. Wasn't
Right.
done because it was different. It was done because I discovered an amazing thing, and that was that they led to unbelievable execution, which in my case led to $1 billion in annual revenue for a
Mhm,
startup.
mhm.
So this stuff is not just kind of like cool stuff to do. It
Right.
was essential. So I listened to frontline people. I mean, the custodians of executing any strategy in business are your frontline people. The irony is that very few leaders really listen to them. Well, I
Yeah.
discovered a
Mhm.
real simple truth. All you need to do is ask your frontline people, first of all, what's not working? Secondly, what do customers want? Thirdly, what processes need to be fixed? And guess what they'll tell you? They'll tell you exactly the right thing. I don't have to sit up in
Right.
my office pontificating all this stuff. So I
Right.
spent a lot of time. I'm an in the trenches guy. I got my hands
Right.
dirty.
Right. Right.
That's why they loved it. I
Yeah.
was,
But you also listened.
well, you have to listen. I,
That's big.
you
Yeah.
know, this is one of there's a lot of people that talk about servant leadership these days, right? The problem is they talk about it as a style of management, and it's not. Okay, it's
Mm,
a strategic act, okay, that starts with how can I help, to what you just said,
yeah.
listening, doing something as a leader, because it's a personal promise here. And you
Yeah.
discover once you do it, I mean, the world opens up, execution flourishes, and guess what happens? Performance of the
Well,
company
right. Mhm,
soars. And so
mhm,
that's what I did. Simple
mhm.
stuff. Simple, simple, simple. Not complicated. And I had peers saying to me, Roy, we can talk about dumb rules if you want. That's one of my favorite things that I did. It was so successful. They said, what's with this dumb rules thing? I mean, it's not complicated enough. Fundamentally, is what they said. Now, a dumb rule is a rule that doesn't make any sense to customers, right? Now,
Right.
every organization have them because they've got the rule custodians writing these stupid things from their point of view. Makes
Right.
no sense, right? So I
Right.
had I had a dumb rules committee consisting of frontline people. They would tell me what rules, Roy, didn't make any sense. And so
Right.
what I did is set upon a
Love it.
course of killing them or otherwise changing them. I would show up, okay, in the workplace with a long sleeve white t-shirt with dumb rules written across it and a big X through them. And that was what I did. And so that was just one
Oh
of my
man.
breakaway things. Now that you will not find that, Nina, in any textbook. Why?
No, of course not.
Why?
Why
Because
is
it's
that?
not driven by any silly formula
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
some model construct that somebody could come up with. And I'm sorry if I'm coming on a bit heavy on this,
I
but
love this.
I'm
No, go
doing
for
it
it.
for a very specific reason because
Yeah.
we're taught to do too much of that stuff.
Right.
It's not
Right.
necessary. And by the
Right.
way, how did people feel about the dumb rules contests that I have every month? They friggin' love them.
I know. I was just thinking, what? I would have freaking loved that. Are you kidding me? And I really have to say something, Roy, about that is because I've worked with a lot of companies and stuff like that. But one thing is, I think it takes a bit of humbleness too, Roy, because for you to have to listen means you don't know it all. Right. And
Yeah,
that's usually challenging. It is when you're like a
yeah,
president or CEO or CFO, whatever. It sometimes becomes a little bit challenging to stop and say, maybe I don't know it all, and not feel threatened that you don't know it all. Right. Because I think that's the other thing is when you are in such a high position, you sometimes feel like if I show them I don't know it, you know what I mean? They're gonna think I don't know how to do my job when that's totally not true. And I think a lot of you that are listening, I know that I have a lot of CEOs and stuff that listen to my show. And I just want you guys to listen to what Roy is saying, because that takes, and not only that, Roy, I also think it also motivates the people to want to follow you, right?
yeah.
Because you're
Well,
like I said, you're boots on the ground, right?
interesting. Like I've left the company for several years now. I left as a very young man. And to this day, I will run into people on the street and they will recognize me. I won't recognize them, but they will
Right.
because it's a large community. And you know what? You know what they quote loved about Roy?
What's that?
Exactly what you're saying. They
Mm,
loved that Roy was no different than
mm-hmm,
anybody else. That
mm-hmm.
that Roy would not only humble, I would just subject myself to whatever they wanted, right? And recognizing that if it weren't for them, we could not execute my
Right,
strategy. And
right,
so that's the whole thing was strategic. Now the problem we have in leadership, okay, to all of your listeners, is that we've been taught that vice presidents and presidents sit up on this kind of like higher echelon and they look down upon their kingdom, right?
right.
And they quote delegate to it. Well, let
Mm-hmm,
me tell you, that model of leadership is hogwash. It's
right,
absolutely hogwash because you're no
right.
different than anybody else in the front line. And if you really cared about results, you wouldn't read your own goddamn press clippings.
Right.
You just wouldn't do it.
Right.
So
Right.
you have to get real on this. And I
Mhm.
had no trouble doing that because I come from a small town in the interior of BC, and we just learned stuff and did stuff. But the thing is, if you don't believe that you need to be different, that you need to figure out ways of executing through human beings, if you
Mhm.
don't believe
Mhm.
that, then you will end up to be one of these, I call them textbook leaders that sit up
Mhm.
there, right, with this lofty job. The reality, Nina, it's not a lofty job. It
Right.
isn't. If
Right.
you want to be effective, it can never be a lofty job.
Right.
And I
Right.
discovered that. And you can trust that what I'm saying is true. Why? Because I built a startup into $1 billion of sales. That's why you can trust me. It
Right.
works.
Right.
It
Yeah.
works.
I mean, yeah. I mean, so let me ask you that for a startup business. Like, what do you think are like for all of the people who are listening? Because I know there's a lot of people right now transitioning, right? There's a lot of people transitioning out of that, corporate life and wanting to start up their own thing, right? I'm sure you're running into that too, right?
Right, right.
So, what do you think will at least start to help them, develop a plan to be successful? How do you think that? What do you think that is?
Yeah, so I work a lot with startup CEOs
Mm,
who have these amazing technology ideas, and that's how they normally start. All right,
mm-hmm,
it's a
mm-hmm,
technology looking for a marketplace. Okay, that's
mm-hmm,
how that starts. My very first question to you, if you were one of these people who were talking to me, is I go, Nina, how is your idea? First of all, a value based idea and not technology is the first question. The second question is, how is it different from everybody else's out there? And the
mm-hmm,
third
mm-hmm.
question is, how are you going to answer the question, why should I buy it from you and not your competitor? Now, the
Right.
reality is, most CEOs don't get that. They can't answer the question. And I say to them, stop. If you can't figure out how your idea is unique and special and one of a kind and the only one, we can talk about the only one because that is one of the best gems I can offer your listeners. If you can't figure that
Mhm.
out when you start, don't start. Keep trying to
Mm,
figure it out
that's
until you
good.
get it right, and then stop this tendency to burn cash because it's a cool idea. Technology isn't
Mhm,
sexy. Okay,
mhm.
value and benefits and experiences and addressing what people crave, not what they need, what they crave, that's sexy. And it's sexy because the competition in the craving space is really low because nobody thinks about it. They're all thinking about satisfying needs, hence price is important, and they're now in the commodity world, which is a horrible place to be. And B, you can charge premium prices for satisfying cravings. I mean, it's just simple
Wow,
stuff.
that's good.
I'm in the cravings business. What you and
Right,
I are doing right now, I'm trying to satisfy what people crave, like interesting communication, edgy language, high level of emotion, high
right,
level of energy, practical stuff. That's what people
right.
crave. They don't
That's
crave more
good.
intellect. If you want intellect, get a PhD out of Harvard and talk about a case study.
Right.
I don't have any time for that.
I love you, Roy.
I
You
don't have
are
any time.
hilarious. I love it. I always say that I don't have any time for that. I don't have no time for that. So let's talk about that though. Like, I love this. Okay, so you're saying that you have to really take your technology or whatever business, because I can apply this to anything. I can apply this to our coaching business, to
Yes,
podcasting, to whatever. It's
yes.
really about what people mostly desire more than what they need, right? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. In fact, I
Yeah.
started out with the word desire. Let me tell you how this morphed for me. Okay, to juxtapose needs, I first started out with this notion called secrets. And I would say what you need to do is figure out the innermost desires of people,
Hmm.
call those their secrets, and then try and market and create value that satisfies the secrets. And then I said, well, hang on a sec. I'm going to start moving that word. And eventually I ended up with the notion of cravings, okay, which kind of talks, what do people crave? What do people lust for? What do
Hmm.
people covet? Okay, to try and really remove it from the notion, this pedantic definition of needs. to make that gap wide so that people understood that it was a completely different concept to start
Right.
figuring out how you're going to be a crave marketer. Figure that out. And it's really simple because there's very few people that actually try and do that. And so
Mm-hmm.
the competition for cravings is less.
Yeah.
So wouldn't
Yeah.
it make sense to try and be in that business? I mean,
That sounds so good.
I know,
Roy, that's amazing. I
I
know the
know,
people who are listening, boy. Okay. So
I know.
what I love is I've interviewed hundreds of people, right? I think we're at like episode 180 or something like that. I don't even know. But I never heard anybody put it that way. I just never heard anybody put it that way. I freaking love it. I'm gonna
Well,
go back now to the drawing board. I have things I gotta fix.
well, see, it's interesting. Like, I want to sort of, morph and move from that concept of cravings to something I discovered when I actually had to undertake this data and internet challenge as president, and that was the definition of what makes you special. And a lot of people call it a competitive advantage claim and a competitive claim. And I got to tell you, business today is mediocre when it comes to that. Like, how many times have you read a statement by a company when they say they're either better or they're best or
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
number
yeah,
one
yeah,
or they're the market leader or
yeah.
they're
All the time.
premium or they've been here 100 years? None of which makes a damn bit of difference to a
Right.
consumer. They want to know, why should I buy from you?
That's right.
So I came up with this concept, which I call the only statement, right? And it's really simple. It's the way to declare your uniqueness in a very granular way so people can see what it means, because nobody knows what better means, anyways, right?
Right.
So it's called "We Are the Only Ones That," right? So Roy is the only one that. ABC company are the only ones that. Now, the interesting thing about the only statement is it's binary. It either exists
Mm,
or it doesn't. You can
mm,
observe it and you can conclude whether it's true and
mm.
whether it addresses something that customers care about. This is the biggest revelation, okay, in my work, quite frankly. And so I would say to your listeners, if you don't have an only statement, you don't have a competitive position. You
Right.
just don't. Go back, check it out. Check your mission
That's
statements. Check
awesome.
your
Yeah.
competitive
Yeah.
complaints. I'll bet you any money that they all have some sort of reference to a comparative. I mean, I did a bit of research on this, and companies, and I'm not saying that companies that don't have it can't be successful. What I'm
Right.
saying is they do a terrible job at telling the consumer why the consumer should buy from them and not somebody else.
Right.
Check out
Right.
Starbucks as an example. Great
Mhm.
company, love their coffee, but I got to tell you, their competitive claim sucks.
Right.
It sucks because it
Right.
isn't clear. It uses all this airy fairy aspirational
Oh,
language. And
yes.
so that to
Yes.
me is something that I learned. You won't find it in a textbook. Oh, sorry, you will. You will find it in two textbooks. One is Be Different or Be Dead, Your Business Survival Guide, which I wrote in 2009, Neena. And the second is in Be Different or Be Dead, The Audacious, Unheard of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 billion in Sales, which hit the
Wow.
market on May the 31st. Man, we're close. We're less than 2 weeks away. Yay! From my second
Awesome.
Be Different or Be Dead in print version.
That's
Come on,
fantastic.
people.
That's fantastic. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about that book. What is the strategy behind that?
The strategy basically was to update what I started writing about formally in 2009.
Mm,
Which was the survival guide, and that was done at a time when the economy was pretty challenging, and
yeah.
so I basically dumped my stuff into this book, right? The interesting story behind it is, um, I was doing a lot of presentations and having a lot of seminars, particularly from small to medium, although some large businesses, on as my wife would say, on my stuff.
Right.
And the one that they loved was called Be Different or Be Dead. And I never gave handouts, right? I was too cheap to give handouts. And so one day, one day this guy says, "Well, if you're not going to give us a handout, why don't you write a book, Roy?" What a great idea.
Right, right.
So I did. So I came out in 2009. Since then, I've written 5 ebooks, basically taking vertical slices of the
Oh,
original Be
nice.
Different or Be Dead. And
Okay.
all this stuff is on my website, bedifferentorbedead.com. And then last year, it occurred to me that it's time to see if I could update my work, and
Mhm.
if it was still relevant. And when I this is amazing to me, when I talked to people about it and said, do you think this stuff has legs? And the result was overwhelming. Oh
Yeah.
my God, does it have legs? It's more important today than it was 13 years ago,
Yeah.
Nina, when I
Yeah.
first wrote it. And so that gave me the motivation to basically come up with my, you can see it in the back, come up with my seventh book, where I literally drove it towards a growth context. If you're
Mm.
able to do these sorts of things, then you too can grow a business, maybe not to $1 billion, but beyond your wildest imaginations. You know what? I
Right.
still get goosebumps when I actually think we created an engine that I'm doing it right now that gave us $1 billion, and we didn't
Right.
start up knowing where we were going to end up. All we started out knowing was this stuff works. This
Right.
stuff is simple. People believe in this stuff. Let's do it.
So do you now see, looking back and then coming to today, do you see how your innovative thoughts and the way you thought differently then, do you see that impacting today the way we do today with tech? Do you see that? Do
Do
you
I see it manifested in the way
Yeah,
people?
yeah, like,
Oh,
you know how you
there's.
said you thought out of the box and everything and
Oh,
you
yeah,
pushed
yeah,
them and everything. Do
yeah.
you see that today, like, as a, wow, if we wouldn't have done that then, maybe we wouldn't be, seeing some things that we see today? Do you see my question? Does that make sense?
I get it. No, I
Okay.
get it. And I've, if you check out my blog, I've written one blog that says, as a chief marketing officer, which I was part of my career, where do I see marketing like a decade after I wrote this article called "Marketing is a Boring Bust"?
Right.
And it's and so one of my conclusions was, and it applies to everything, is that have we made progress in
Mm,
business?
mhm.
Yes. Have we made the kind of progress that I would have liked to have seen in terms of the strategic part of the business? And I would say no.
Mhm.
I would
Mhm.
say no. There's even though there's more competition today, the amount of differentiation that's communicated is less. I mean, I
Right.
refer to businesses as being really mediocre in a certain way, and I get challenged by that. And I
Mhm.
always say,
Mhm.
okay, show me how many only competitive claims there are out there.
Right.
And they say to me,
Right.
well, why should I listen to you? And I said, well, because I took a startup to $1 billion. Doesn't that
Right.
give you some currency and belief in it?
Right.
Okay, really. I mean, so there's those sorts of simple, tried and proven things. And maybe I didn't do a good enough job starting out in 2009, Nina. Maybe I didn't spread the word the way I should have. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I'm loving having these conversations is
Right.
today I have a different avenue to get the word about be different or be dead and breakaway thinking out there. And I really appreciate and I'm grateful for it. Didn't have so much of it then 12 years ago. So I'm grateful for that. Maybe I didn't do a good enough job, but I'm having another go at it. I want to
That's right.
change the conversation
I love it.
away from copying people. All right.
Yeah.
Going to
I
Google
love
and
that.
finding best in
Yeah.
class and copying that crap because it doesn't make any sense. You know what?
I love it.
There's certain things to copy. There's other things not to copy. You
Yeah,
never
yeah.
copy stuff that's related to the strategy or business. And yet people do that. I think it's intellectually dishonest to claim that
Mhm.
copying an idea is actually innovative. It's
Mhm.
not, right?
Right, right,
I think it's abhorrent for
right.
people to talk that way, and there's so much of that going on. So
Yeah.
I can go down my breakaway list here, and I can give you probably 12 things, okay, that continue to go on today that are exactly 180 degrees out of phase with what I would like to see. And it starts with competitive claims. It goes on to talk about people copying, not creating. It
Mm.
talks about people focusing on crowds, not individuals. Like one of the things that drives me
So good.
crazy about
Yeah.
marketing is they think the average customer exists, and that's why they market to masses. And I'm saying, seriously? You think I'm the same as the next dude next to me? You just haven't looked closer enough.
Right.
And quite frankly, if you did, you'd find out what I craved, and then you
Right.
could make money off me, right?
freaking
So there's
love that.
tons of
Ah,
stuff.
so
Tons of stuff like
good.
that. We should do another
Roy.
show. We should do another
We
show
have
on
to.
what breakaway means, because I got
Let's do
tons of
it.
stuff here.
Let's do it. Honestly, because my brain has like I am like loving this conversation because I love creating as well. And sometimes I get stuck in that, Roy. I get stuck in the, well, how is everybody else doing it? And what do the masses think? Like that stuff, right? Because some of the coaches I've had in the past have kind of led me in that direction. And quite honestly, my brain is very very organized. Like everything has to be organized and put in place. But when I hear these kind of conversations or these kind of statements like what is your only statement? We are the only one that dot dot dot. Like my brain just like,
Boom.
yeah, completely exploded. So Roy, I really do want to do another one if that's okay with you. I'm going to send you the link. Let's do it. And I would love to have you back on because I think you just have so much wisdom and so much to share. And I love that different way of thinking is just fantastic. I literally am thinking about like how I'm going to change my whole damn thing now. I'm so excited. Okay. So before I let you go, Roy, I do want to all of my listeners to know where they can buy your book and follow you and maybe work with you. Now, do you coach? I know that you mentor. Do you coach as well, or?
Absolutely. Well, let me answer the
Because,
question this way.
yeah.
First of all, my home is bedifferentorbedead.com, and
Mhm.
I would love for people to come and visit. I've tried to develop the site as a resource for people.
Mhm.
So I blog every Monday. So there's a new blog out today saying why
Awesome.
6 out of 10 is an awesome score. Most people don't think 6 out of 10 is terribly brilliant. I happen to do. Go check it out.
Right.
Why?
I
That's the sort
am.
of stuff that I write about all the time. And there's a page on my books. So you can go and check out each of my books. Find out, there's links in terms of where you can go to buy them or check out further, etc. There's also what I call a thoughtful remarks page. And so if you wanted to find out what other people are saying about Roy and his work, including other podcast hosts. So I hope I hope you give me some sort of words and I
Oh
post
yeah,
all that stuff with a link to
absolutely.
your recording. And then there's my email, roy.osing@gmail.com. I'm happy to have a conversation with you as a person about what's going on with you. I
Mhm.
mean, I get now, because I've been doing this for a couple of months, I get people sending me an email saying, Roy, here's my draft only. What do you think?
Right.
Oh, come on. That is so cool. And I spend some time working with them. In fact, after this show, I've got a guy calling me. He's bent out of shape because he can't differentiate his teaching business, and
Right.
so I'm going to give him a half an hour of my time to do that. So
That's
yes, I do
awesome.
all that stuff.
That's
Yes, I
awesome.
coach. I've got a lot of young professionals that, quite frankly, are lost, and they
Yeah.
don't have to be. Nina,
Yeah.
they do not have to be lost. I've got some insights and some observations, not prescriptions. Like I don't want to be tagged as a prescription guy because I don't have the right to prescribe what's right for you. What I can do though is give you all sorts of ideas that
Right.
worked for me, and you pick and choose what might work for you.
Ugh,
And I'm happy to do that
awesome.
with anybody.
Awesome. Awesome. You people out there better listen up. Roy knows what he's talking about. All right. Make sure you get on there and check him out. I'm going to make sure that I do all of that, Roy. You are amazing. And
Oh,
this was a
thanks.
great conversation. I loved it. Loved it. Loved it.
Thank
Guys,
you.
thank you so much. Make sure that you link with his information below. I'm going to make sure everything's on there. Go on to his website. Go ahead and read that book. I just cannot wait to have him back on. As you guys know, I love anything that tantalizes the brain and makes you think differently. And that is exactly what he did. So, guys, thank you so much for being here. Neena Perez, Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. You know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, all that great stuff. Until next time.
Broadcast is brought to you by Wincheck Studios. We are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.